Hello. Hey, guys.
Hey, Reed.
Hello.
I'll start with some introductions because I feel very honored to be sharing the stage with two incredible entrepreneurs and founders in their own rights, as well as investors. So Sarah and I started our careers together as interns a long time ago. And Sarah was the person responsible for actually introducing me to Sequoia 10 years ago. And Sarah now is the founder and managing partner of Conviction, which is an AI-native early-stage venture capital firm. Anu, I've known for probably 5 years. We've worked on boards together. And Anu is the founder and managing partner of Avra, which is a new growth stage investment firm. And I think we have an interesting perspective here as two incredible investors and business builders, and also people who've served on boards of companies from very small pre-revenue to very large hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue. And I was going to start with a question which is relevant for Vanta, which is how many of those slides have you guys seen where the company puts the gigantic SOC 2 thing saying, yay, we finally got our SOC 2? And do you have any good stories of those moments in time?
15?
15. Well, I've seen quite a lot more because at YC, Vanta was the chosen SOC 2 compliant provider for most YC startups. And now I've come to a point where if I don't see a slide that has Vanta on it, I ask them, why is this not Vanta compliant, not SOC 2 compliant?
Exactly. And I should say, I've been at Sequoia for 10 years. I represent Sequoia on Vanta's board of directors. And I actually first met Vanta because Loom, which recently got acquired by Atlassian, right after we invested in Loom, they did not meet their target because they got caught in security review and they had not yet gotten their SOC 2. And then they met Vanta and the rest was history. And ever since then, I've had a very soft spot for Christina and Vanta and everybody else. So, but the topic today is security as a boardroom priority. And I think it's probably interesting for folks in the audience to hear kind of what is the general tenor in board meetings in 2023? Any common through lines you've seen across stages or companies? Maybe Sarah, I'll start with you.
I think the biggest thing which everybody is experiencing is AI has become the strategic topic of companies at every scale. And so I think it went from very reactive to like ChatGPT last November as the starting gun for a sea change in technology and people figuring out what to do. And then I think we're in the sort of planning, execution, experimentation phase.
How was you, Anu?
Yeah, I think definitely AI is a common theme, but I also sit on 2 public boards. I'll say that cybersecurity is the main topic in especially the audit committee meetings. There's now almost an hour dedicated on that because of AI, the attacks are getting smarter too. And so therefore, there's definitely a lot more attention and resources and dollars going towards cybersecurity, especially as a public company.
Yeah, I think if you were going to rank like the top 3 topics from the last couple months, I'd say AI, cyber, and then like actually quality of business, like how efficient you are and what the market thinks of that in 2023.
I would agree with that for sure. And if you were to use your investor predict the future brains and wind the clock forward to December 2024, what do you think is the through line conversation that companies might be having then? Anu, we'll start with you.
You know, one of the most difficult things as an investor, I'd say, is since 2020, we've been wrong about many things. So
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, I'll speak for myself. But I just think it was first the pandemic. We didn't know how long the pandemic would last, how that would impact companies, what would happen to, is the world done? And then 2021 was like, oh, we can really operate. Because of technology, honestly, that was the reason we could operate, and partly thanks to Zoom is the reason we all operated. And then everything moved online, and we said, oh, we are this new world, and now we realize, okay, the full new world doesn't work. So I think the end of 2024, my hope is there's actually more optimism than how we all feel today, which is, what is it today? I think we're still in a great place, but I think what we've seen is a period of uncertainty, volatility, shifts in spend, shifts in consumption, and geopolitically also a very tense climate. So I do think 24, my hope is end of 24. There'll also be a few elections that are done so that we will probably look forward more towards a little more stability. But from a technology standpoint, I think, look, AI would have advanced more. We would have made more investments in cybersecurity. But from a company building standpoint, from a founder standpoint, from people here who are working at companies, I do hope at the end of 24 we look forward and say, finally, we can actually plan and predict and be more realistic about what we would accomplish short term. Because I think we all know how the long term is going to play out. I think if you asked me what the 5 or 10-year outlook would look like, I'll have more confidence in my answer than today what early 24 is going to look like. So my hope is by end of 24, we see more stability.
I think the dominant topic in 24 is still going to be AI. I want to add to one thing that Anu said after, but if you just think about what most companies have been able to do this year, you have a I don't know. You rub the lamp and you get a genie, and the genie has magic capabilities. And this year was a year of capability building for boards and for teams, and understanding, like, do we have the agility? Do we understand the risk? How do we address this sea change in technology? Now you have execution, right? And I think we're going to see a lot more business impact of competition using AI in customer experiences for efficiency. One thing Anu said, I think actually has been really characterized as well my experience over the last year. I've not spent so much time in my career thinking about policy and CFIUS and geopolitical instability. I think that is going to become a topic for more and more companies at scale.
And then on the AI topic, I think in boardrooms and in the conversation writ large, there is this balance between excitement and enthusiasm about new product creation, job creation, as well as a sense of concern or terror about, forget X risk, but short-term job loss, short-term data privacy, security, everything else. What's your perspective on how boards are, in general, balancing those two conversations? I think you kind of see one side of things on Twitter and everywhere else, but in the the boards that really matter, what's the general tone? Sarah, you want to start?
I think that there is generally pressure from the competitive environment, often from the board that has context about what's going on more broadly in the industry versus a team that's very focused on their execution to go faster. And then there's a tension of, do we also understand the risks both within our company, reputationally, how this affects product experience? And I think that's like a really active conversation right now. I'm not sure one should rely on the board for understanding of that risk versus proposing it and contextualizing it.
Yeah, I would agree with, from a board perspective, I don't think the board should, you don't need governance yet on that point. But I think companies should be having conversations about how to use AI productively, both to serve their customers as well as to improve efficiency. I'll give you a simple story here, maybe for us, a very short one. I started my career as an automation engineer. That's what I started as, and that was 15 years ago. So and if you look at AI, I'm so happy that AI has made automation cool, because 15 years ago, automation was about efficiency, and today, AI is making automation intelligent. So if there's one thing that you can take away from it, I think what both should do is more ask the question of, how are you using AI? Is there anyone on your team using AI? So there are 2 companies that I work with, and you can see this, I'm sure you all see this in your companies. Some of them are very advanced in the way they're at least experimenting and using AI. So where are some of the low-hanging fruits? Like, one of our companies has seen a 35% improvement in engineering productivity just by using AI for automating code reviews. Now, that's something that everyone can use, right? Which, if one company was able to tackle it by building their own, they used a bunch of AI tools, but they've also built their own custom capabilities on top to get it to 35% productivity. Well, that's really impactful. Now, there were security side questions that came up as a result of that, which was, okay, am I putting my entire code base somewhere to train this model? Is that, what amount of data gets exposed versus not? But the only way we're going to learn is through experimentation. So that's one area where I've seen, AI play a huge role. And if you look at the public companies, they're not experimenting at the same pace. I'm talking about non-tech public companies. But for the first time, I felt this only in 2009 when the iPhone was launched, when everyone talked about it. And now, 14 years later, non-tech public companies are talking about AI because they know that they can bring those same efficiencies for real-time decision making if they had an in-house team, or they could use tools that will help them use AI to make better decisions daily. So it is a paradigm shift, and we need to embrace that shift. And so I think the board conversations are more from the lens of what are we learning from things that are working versus not working, and then how do we embrace that in the context of risk, especially when it comes to consumer and data privacy breach, right? Those two are like the topmost topics that happen.
I think I want to try to pop like a little myth bubble here that is, new technology, even take AI out of the picture, but an automation technology, a new capability is automatically associated with more risk for the company. It is new. You have to understand it in context. But there are a lot of things that make us more secure that are driven by automation and AI already, right? And so I think it's like useful to look at a few examples. Vanta is an obvious one. But the promise of most new technology is like you can do things you couldn't do before. You could do them at scale. Nobody would think today of doing fraud management for a payments company entirely by hand. It is not more secure. It is not less risky. If you look at companies like Sybil in the pen testing automation space, I don't think there are a lot of companies that are like, yeah, like my pen tester, I know for sure they're doing well. I have a lot of consistent understanding of what's going on here. I think there are a lot of arguments, even beyond security and fraud. If you look at legal, like, do you understand what all of your contracts say? Do you understand your risk completely, and is it minimized? Like, that's really labor-intensive work to reduce risk that I think we can now do. And so I think there's opportunity there as well.
And there's also a debate between how small companies are positioned in this wave versus how big companies are positioned in this wave. And since you guys see both of those things, do you have a perspective either on how those conversations are going, or who is necessarily positioned to succeed? Sarah?
Yeah, I think the starting narrative was something along the lines of, these capabilities, deploying large language models, diffusion models, new generative AI capabilities, they require specialized technical teams, machine learning operations teams. They leverage data that only your company has, and large companies have existing distribution. I think that is no different than many other technology waves where the tooling improves, the talent base expands, and then you have a question of who is willing to experiment and take risk. I think one thing that's actually like really on the side of large incumbents, many large incumbents in this wave, is I've never seen so many technical and business leaders embrace a change as aggressively. You see a lot of CEOs, management teams, founders say, like, we're going to try to become an AI-first company, and like this is something I care about. That hasn't happened in the last decade with a change I've seen.
Yeah, and I'd say, I loved your fraud example. So we work with one of the fintech companies that I work with. It used to cost them $7 to do KYC AML in Brazil. And actually, it's, of course, Brazil has a higher fraud risk, but you would think that if you're hiring a firm there to do KYC AML, because of the cost of labor, it should be cheaper. But because of higher fraud, they charge higher. And if you use one of the Google models, which is more, secure and conservative than I would say than other models, to do KYC AML for Brazil today with 50% accuracy, it costs 50 cents. So $7 versus 50 cents, how could you not at least try that and embrace that, right? So you see younger companies taking that risk more, to your point, which is like, what's the difference between younger versus more established companies? They want to experiment. They probably have fewer users than someone who's serving 1 billion users, so they can take that risk and experiment. But if the large company is sitting on the sidelines, I don't think it does them any service. Like, what are you sitting in the sidelines for? You can at least, size your scope of risk. You can try it in one zip code. You could try it in a certain area. And so what I'm seeing with large established companies, especially non-tech, I think tech has always been very good about embracing new technologies, because I think as technology startup operator or founder, you know that the only thing that that is a risk for you is your own disruption because you sat on the sideline. But for the first time, what I'm seeing with non-tech large public companies, like I'll tell you, I sit on the board of Avis. It's probably the largest rental car share company. And you'd think that all the decisions are automated about whether the car is in Denver or in Iowa, where the cars are moved. It's not. It's usually a field service ops team, and they have like a war room, in the morning, and they decide, okay, based on demand for next week, where the cars need to be moved in neighboring states. But because of AI, even they have started automating because they feel they'll be left behind. And so I think the shift you're seeing from large non-tech companies is not just the AI wave, it's actually making the entire operation way more efficient. And so I think we'll see the wave 2 of internet because of AI, because these large companies are now embracing that.
I think Vanta is like the vanguard of a type of company we're going to see more of in AI, and it's related to what Anu just said. Like, you see non-technology companies recognize the risk and the opportunity, because the biggest opportunity for AI is not in attacking the existing categories of software. It's attacking services and introducing new capabilities. Right? And so companies like Vanta are very different from offerings we had before. I think some of the most interesting AI companies, they don't look like they're attacking like some large existing software vendor. And I think some of the smartest business leaders in other sectors outside of technology understand that. Like one of my portfolio companies that is growing like a weed right now is a company called HeyGen. They're not trying to attack a video editing provider, for example. They're reducing your need to do video production at all. That's like an agency services offering today. So you're going to see more companies of this shape.
And then if AI is priority number 1, and obviously that has its own set of cybersecurity implications as well, and cybersecurity is the strong number 2.
Yeah.
Be it in the audit committee, section of the board meeting where you put on I'm putting my IT security hat on, or in the boardroom more broadly. What are the key focus areas, any interesting conversations, or maybe things this audience might not predict in that conversation?
Yeah, the best CISOs that I've worked with, they tend to have a very simple framework for what do we need to change in our organization. And the first thing, two of these pieces are outside of the CISO's control, unfortunately. It's a really hard job. But the first thing is what's changing in the infrastructure around us, the technology. And AI is a big piece of that. But it was digitization and cloud and globalization and mobile, all of these different environmental changes. I think that continues to happen now, and AI and the data piece of that, and not even just around traditionally cybersecurity, but risk and liability becomes a bigger question. The second piece tends to be what are the attackers doing? Yeah. And Reed, you mentioned this, if defenders do not use these new machine learning capabilities, attackers certainly will, and they are. Right. So I think that is a range of everything from advanced phishing to exploit generation. I think it runs the entire gamut, and people are beginning to think about the types of attacks or face them depending scale and sensitivity of data. And then I think the third piece, which is actually the most exciting because it's kind of the security team being on the offensive, is how can I improve my organization? Having worked in security for a decade, I feel like I can say this as part of the community. Security people are often, they're a little more cynical. They've seen some stuff, right? It's a hard job, and all of that is true. I am, a while back, I was on the board of this company called Demisto that is now part of Palo Alto Networks. There are probably some customers and former customers here. But Demisto was not a new detection type technology, like a new mousetrap. It was an automation framework. It allowed you to write Python in the security team and deploy a bunch of integrations against your existing tools to do things that your security team was doing faster. I think we're going to see next generations of that, and I've never seen security people be so open to things like compliance, testing, and operations automation. Because I think we were going to talk a little bit about reporting to the board. Like the board understands the efficiency of doing the same thing better and faster.
Yeah, I think on the second point for the attackers, what Sarah said, I would underscore that. We actually already see that. So I'll give you a simple example. One of the things I get as a report is the phishing attacks that happen. And the attackers, usually you could catch the phishing attacks, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, is from people whose first language was in English. And now ChatGPT writes a perfectly drafted English email. And, we saw this actually 2 months ago. And it was hard to catch it. It was not easy to find the root cause, or you find it as an outlier. So you do see, if the attackers start embracing more of this, you will see, way better sophisticated phishing attacks. Now you can write code and even introduce malware through it. And so this has become an issue in the audit portion of the cybersecurity. And therefore, because think about it, if you are a large public company servicing 200, 300 million users, and you have one of these attacks, or you have a data breach on your system, that's millions of dollars of revenue lost, even if you had it for 6 hours of outage. That's unacceptable. So it's no longer about, here's the issue and here's how soon we fixed it. It's more, what are we doing to stress test our systems? And are we ahead and proactive and are reducing the incidences of our issues? And it's become more real-time and dynamic. It can't be done once a quarter. And so that's kind of why you're seeing a portion of the audit meetings being dedicated to cybersecurity. And one of the jokes one of the CISOs told me was, this was like 2 quarters ago, which was, hey, we often think about what would be the investment area that lasts for 30 years. I mean, we can be very sure that cybersecurity is only going to get more complex. So for 30 years, we're going to be fine, right? There's going to be a lot of investment that goes into cyber.
Yeah, for what's worth, I totally agree with that. And I think one of the interesting things about this moment in time, and it's obviously probably daunting for folks in the audience, is just the infrastructure changes that have sort of happened in these decade-long cycles. At this point, everyone uses a million SaaS tools and infrastructure providers and everything else. But that sort of infrastructure security shifts, you can kind of get in front of, not well enough, but kind of get in front of. I think with the potential new vector it's introduced by AI, the nature of, I think, trust on the internet is going to be disrupted very quickly. And, making sure that, as a company, all the vendors that you rely on, you can trust, making sure that you can prove to the people who rely on you that they can trust you, and then making sure that your employees and your company and everything else is capable of handling what's going to be, I think, a very fast-moving, trust environment, and trust not in necessarily the, IT security sense, but I think in the broader, existing on the internet sense. I think it's going to change very quickly. And as such, I think the jobs of security professionals to, number one, educate their workforce. Number two, report to their customers. Number three, report to the board. I think is going to be, the burden's going to get, I think, much, much, much higher, and it's going to get much higher fairly quickly. Anyway, and you can't do that without automation, hence why we're all here. Now, for those people in the audience who are entrepreneurs, you folks have both struck out on your own and started businesses, as well as advised amazing entrepreneurs over the years. Is there any piece of kind of can't miss advice that you think anybody in the audience needs to hear who are either doing their own company or considering doing their own company?
If anybody besides a customer tells you you are incapable of doing something, starting a company, building a product, don't listen to them.
That's great advice. I think I'm newer in the journey than Sarah, and I can tell you that the amount of entrepreneurship is exciting, but also comes with a lot of pain and anxiety. But the amount of pain and anxiety is the amount of joy you get is well worth the amount of pain and anxiety, and it does get way better. So all you need to do is keep trying every day and make progress, and that's all that it takes. It compounds. You learn, you get fast feedback, and you iterate. So I think I learned that by working with some amazing founders. And in fact, Sarah was the first person who met me when I came to VC, so that makes two of us. Sarah gave me a full download of what to do and what not to do.
The blind leading the blind a decade ago.
But I would say, enjoy the journey. It's amazing. And if you love it, you can never be employed after that, because you'll never want to be employed.
Oh, that's awesome. It's funny you said it's going to get better over time, and it's worth it, all the pain. And like, that's kind of like the generic parenting advice that I've given too. It's going to get better. Just hang.
It does get better.
It gets better.
It gets way better.
Yeah.
We all have young kids, and I think I average the youngest.
Yeah.
So, lovely. Let's look out, maybe extend the horizon beyond 2024. We only have a few minutes left. Next 10 years, what's the one big thing, the big idea that gets you most excited when you wake up in the morning about investing in technology and this wave?
I mean, I think this is going to sound cliche, but I still have to say it because I don't think I've felt this excited after 2009 was with AI. And, I was at business school so I worked at Qualcomm, and my last project was the iPhone. It was a secret project, so that was my project. And so it launched while I was in business school. And I had pitched BlackBerry as a shark, and no one believed us. They laughed us out of the room, like, what do you mean BlackBerry is a shark? And we were like, how in the world could you not see that iPhone was just going to change the way you interact with every possible service? It's not just a beautiful device with a better UI. The App Store fundamentally changed. First of all, it put smartphones on, billions of people, and then it had the GPS, and those two alone revolutionized, what we use today as second nature, like Uber, DoorDash, any of those services. And AI, I think, I feel, based on all the learnings I have, and I learn every day from founders. I only talk to founders and engineers because I feel like they're the ones that know what's actually happening and what are the changes coming. And to me, it feels like every product that we have used is fundamentally going to be redesigned, rethought of, and changed, including Google. If you told me 10 years ago that someone else will come or that Google might evolve or there'll be a different Google, I would not have believed, right? Because it's so second nature to us. Anything we have a question on, we first ask Google, then we go and figure out, okay, how do I go to this next level? Now it's like, well, not really. I can start at ChatGPT, and that's getting better. So think about it. Should we be using Microsoft operating system? Will PowerPoint slides look the same way as Microsoft PowerPoint? I think everything is going to change. So I don't know how to predict the short term, but in 10 years, I think every service that we interact with is going to be redefined.
Except Microsoft Excel.
Well, I do agree that I do growth stage too, and I do agree that it's nothing that beats Microsoft. I have to agree.
How about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I can't disagree. Intelligence is a really broad capability, right? And I think sometimes lost in the discussion of the very real risks and the policy discussion is if you ask any individual person, do you want more capability? Do you want more intelligence at your disposal? Not a single person's going to say no, right? And so that is how I think of the demand for this set of capabilities. And so I refuse to make hard predictions I can be held to around AI because you're just always wrong, even when you're staring at the products and the research every day. But if you project the capabilities we have a little further, the thing that inspires me most is the democratization of these capabilities. I was just talking to Alyssa Henry, is this woman who was until quite recently the CEO of Square, right, the little reader app, and before that she was the GM of AWS storage services, the storage bucket for the world. Everybody's used a ton of really interesting infrastructure services there. And I was talking to her about what the opportunity was for merchants and SMBs for AI. And she was like, think about everything that a large company is capable of doing that a mom and pop merchant is not. because it requires expertise and vendors and expense, and that is write great copy, create product images, run a marketing campaign, create video ads, do targeted advertising, message their customers one-on-one, rank their customers by value. Like, you think about all the things that the most sophisticated businesses do today, and we can do more and more of that with AI capabilities, and I think that is just true across so many more domains. And so, like, I'm very excited, as I'm sure Reed and Anu are, about the investing opportunity, but I think the net impact 10 years from now is just, you're going to see much more capable, like, humans across a bunch of business domains, and that's really inspiring.
Yeah, the thing that I think for me, in closing, I think in a world of accelerating change, which in large part is driven by technological innovation, there is a bit of the obstacle is the way. The way to, protect yourselves and protect the world is through technology and automation and innovation itself. And I have an interesting dual citizenship up here, represent Sequoia, but also Vanta, and having seen what's in the hopper from Vanta, I think the ways to leverage AI and also the ways to protect and build trust on the internet is going to be extremely exciting for everybody. And I think some of the announcements this morning showed some of that. There's a lot more to come. So thank you all, and onwards. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Sam.